All right, guys. So the last couple videos that we did, you guys seemed to really enjoy, and both properties went under. We got several orders quite quickly when doing those videos. So I wanted to, I guess, talk about a topic that was brought up several times, or at least I've gotten several messages about it, is owner financing tax properties. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. I will say that the safest way to do it, in my opinion, is with a deed. And if there's a property that's kind of cleaned up already, or at least has been, you've kind of looked at the title, you've looked at stuff with it, and you feel comfortable that there's nobody coming back, say the person's died or whatever, in those situations, I'm quite a bit more comfortable owner financing them. So we're just going to talk through, and I was going to show you guys another property, because I'm going to try to start doing this like three or four properties a week, where I'm just going to go out and we're going to talk about them and kind of look at them, and I'll give you my opinion and how you can exit, or how you can enter the property, or things you can do with it, I guess. So what I've done, and let me go ahead and say this, that I am not an attorney and this is not legal advice. When owner financing a property, I've found that I'll go ahead and get either a deed or certificate with it, and I'll clean it out. So I'll get the grass cut, I'll get it secured. I tend to start the ejectment process, so I'll file something. That way I know that if something's going to happen in the next couple days, maybe a week or two, that it'll at least come out in the open. So cutting the grass will tend to bring people out anyways, because the neighbors will be talking. So clean it out, put some locks on it, kind of get it secured, and then I try to put a lockbox on all the properties, because it's easier to just hand out a lockbox code and be like, hey, when you get done, lock it up. And there's kind of a checks and balances already there, because with owner financing property, there's so many people that want it, that the people coming behind the person that maybe didn't lock up will tell you, like, hey, I came here and the door was unlocked, just wanted to let you know. And that's an easy way for me that I'll start pre-vetting people, that if you can't follow directions on, lock up when you leave, that you're not going to pay on time. So I'll put a lockbox in the door, and then I'll throw it up on Facebook Marketplace. $5,000 down and $400 a month is kind of the sweet spot. You can get a little bit higher if the property's worth more. We have taken higher down payments. And there's two different ways you can do it. Either you can do just a full-blown mortgage, and we send all of our stuff through Greg, and Stanley Associates is the ones that do it, and they can draft it up for you. Or you can do a land contract. So with a land contract, or like a lease to own or a rent to own kind of thing, it's an agreement that doesn't get recorded. So when they get done paying for the property, they then get a deed. So the benefit of doing a land contract is that if you're in the back end, so like if you told them, hey, this property is worth $50,000, I'm going to sell it to you for $30,000, and it'll be a clear title. The benefit of doing a land contract is that you can fix the title on the back end. So, they're paying every month, they're fixing the property up, and you're collecting that rent money, but you're also clearing the title up as you go. With a mortgage, you can do that same thing, and maybe you just don't record the mortgage until you're done. It does kind of clam up the process if it's not already pretty clean. But anyway, so you throw up on Facebook Marketplace. The last couple that we've done haven't lasted but a couple hours. So $5,000 down, generally in most cases with a tax property, covers your initial investment. There's some that you might be able to get, you might be closer to the 10,000 range, but 9 times out of 10, that 5,000 is covering your money, if not putting a little bit in your pocket with some of these 2020 ones. So I've found that the interest rate, it doesn't really matter. Between 10 and 15%, I think, is a reasonable number to get for it. But again, they're more interested in the monthly payment being, a certain amount, something they can afford, but also something because you're not doing anything to the property. My goal is not to fix it up outside of securing it, cleaning it up, and make it presentable. And we talked about that in the other video, that first one we looked at. Had that house been cleaned out, it would have been, it's a whole lot easier to sell. when people can walk through it and kind of see the potential versus they walk it in and just see a bunch of crap. Then the way that I do it is just send it off to Greg for closing. They'll start the paperwork, but you can use, and really I'm trying not to stereotypical with the Latino community, but they do, that's where the majority of my stuff goes. They tend to have cash and they tend to pay on time, and they have the ability to fix the property, and I've yet to have to take one back from them. So that will probably be who you end up getting, unless you're hooking a friend up with it. But I've always said try to be careful with who you do business with, especially if you have to take the property back. And really, I've found on the properties that I have had to take back, you know, they're a whole lot better condition than when I sent them off. So you ended up with a better property, and you can just resell it. So it's really, it's very low. It cuts out some of the risk, I guess I should say. So what I look for is I try to pick up a source of income. So if they're self-employed, I'm trying to find where that money's coming from. I tend to look at 2 to 3 months of bank statements. And the reason that I want to do that is I want to kind of see their cash flow. I want to see if they're constantly overdrafting, if they've got the money that they actually say they do. Like, where's the $5,000 coming from? And do you have maybe another $10,000 in savings that I can see that you're going to fix up the property? I've got one right now that I don't know where he spent his money. He had the money for the down payment. He had a significant amount of money in savings, and like the other day, because I'll drive by my properties maybe twice a year. With my rentals, I try to be in there at least once every quarter. But so I drove by and like nothing's happened. So I call him up. I'm like, hey dude, where are we at with this? And he's like, well, I have this other project I'm doing and I haven't quite finished. I'm like, well dude, you're kind of like, and in hindsight, I should have said, I need to amend my mortgage a little bit, that if there's an activity moving forward within a certain amount of time, that's in breach of contract. Because really, it doesn't do anybody good if he's paying monthly for this thing for a house that needs like 15 grand worth of work. So I've got to have another conversation with him. He's in breach right now without having insurance on it, and I'm getting ready to have to drop insurance on it just to cover myself. But there's a tidbit. Make sure when you craft stuff, and I would almost say, I was trying to say keep the house in order might be one, but maybe if the water gets turned off for more than 30 days or 60 days, that would, because like a house that's not being worked on or not, there's no forward progress, the water is going to be off. So writing in there that if the water's off for more than 60 days, it's in breaching contract. And that's probably reasonable. A judge would probably say yes versus saying, hey, you need to be working on the house, because it's so vague. So there's an idea for that. So I'm looking, we'll go back to kind of checking the person out. I'll check out kind of where their money is, how much money they have available, where they're working. I may call a reference or two, but these are I'm pretty flexible on these. Like, I'm not really digging in miles deep, because the cost of a foreclosure or eviction is going to run about $1,500 to $2,000, and they've already given me $5,000. So if I'm throwing them out, I'm just going to resell the house. So again, it's really not, I wouldn't really stress about it. Like, trust your gut, look it over, but don't get analysis paralysis, because the other side of it is if you spend too much time with these people, it's not worth it, because you're spending days or weeks, and you will tend to have, like, I want to say the last one we did one on Green Springs, which I remember. I posted it before we went into dinner, and my wife was so mad about this, because I never quit messing with it. But I posted it before we went into the Mexican restaurant, and then by the time that we were done, I think we had like 90 or something messages about it, and we had it. That was that Friday, and I had somebody lined up that was in good shape by the end of the day, Saturday. So they go really quick. So you need to be mindful and kind of have a process in place. And the first one's going to suck anyways, because you're kind of figuring it out. But be mindful that you don't need to take a ton of time, because the worst case scenario is that you have to take back a better house than you sold. So like, okay, you sold the house, you're getting a house back that's worth more now than what you did when you sold it. So the other thing that I think is beneficial of using a closing attorney is that you pick up some credibility. So you're not just somebody from the internet selling a house, and there's plenty of people out there that are doing people wrong or scamming. So if it all goes through a closing attorney, there's the benefit of you picking up their credibility. So I think there's a side effect of you using it. Plus, you don't have to deal with it. Like, our whole motto is to try to be as efficient as possible. And if you let people do what their, professionals do, then you don't have to. Like, there's another wholesaler out there. I say wholesaler, but somebody that deals in tax properties, and he does all the paperwork himself. Like, everything's done on the hood of his car. So I'm like, dude. And he's legit. Like, he's not scamming people, but it's just like, dude, why would you want to do that? Why would you not let somebody else handle the part that they should be handling versus you just doing it on your hood and looking hella shady? And I was gonna look at another property with y'all today, but I drove by it already, and the street's really busy. And something that I already knew and I just relearned is that Friday at nearly 6:30, nearly 7, is not a good time to go look at houses in the hood. I wouldn't say it was the hood. It's decent. I mean, it's a decent part of town, but in areas that people are out on the street. So there's two sides to that. There's a benefit to that. If you're looking at it as a rental, looking at it at different times of the day is helpful because you kind of get to see what's going on. So like Friday, the street was freaking packed with people, and I wasn't about to walk in, but like, so guys, here's a tax property. To my left, we've got everybody that's staring at me. To the right, we've got the house. I wasn't about to do that. So if that property's still available next week, we'll do it that one. Which you guys took no time at all to get those other two off, which is why I've started to put the link, the altaxsale.com/order to move forward with them, because we got there's probably 6 or 7 applicants that came in after showing those. And I think that's an angle that some folks are missing. Like, sometimes you just look at the properties like, hey, I can fix it up and rent it out, or I can fix it up and live in it, or whatever. But I've found my favorite strategy, and those that have had consults with me, is like, owner financing is the way to go. Now, there is an argument going around right now that the way inflation is, that those that are holding debt are going to be the ones that lose. But again, so a decent tax property from 2000, maybe 6, well, let's see, 2012 forward is going to cost less than 10 grand. You're going to get half of your money back right away, and it's going to take you another year to catch up with the rest of your money. So in a year, on probably a 10 to 15 year note, your money's out, and you didn't have to fix it up, and on top of it, you may get it back. And then I've done one on a certificate, and I'll go ahead and talk about that. I knew the whole situation. I knew they weren't coming back. We'd finished suing them on a couple other houses, so I knew it wasn't going to be an issue. Just be very careful when owner financing a certificate, because let's just walk through the situation. So you buy a certificate, it's a 2019, you're getting a deed in a year and a half. You owner finance it, you paid $3,000 for it, you picked up $5,000, it's $400 a month, they're fixing it up, and then the owner comes back. Now what? Well, we'll just redeem. Okay, well, how do you deal with this person that has paid you money, so now you got to refund that? Now you've got to sort out the details with them on how much the preservation improvement. So you got to be very hands-on with them. So you're getting an appraisal, you're getting a BPO, you're doing something to CYA, because elsewise it's just going to turn into a giant cluster where you're basically all three of you are going to end up in court, and you're going to be the one that looks like scum because you had somebody sign up that maybe doesn't speak English very well, is now trying to buy this house from you that things aren't done right. So I would say be very careful with that. I think there's another angle. So I don't know if you all have bought foreclosures, but the when you buy a foreclosure, you can buy a redemption bond. Basically, if the person comes back, that bond will pay you off. So there's a form that they have with that, and I've not done this, but this is an idea that I had driving around, that you could have them sign that form. Basically, hey, this property has been bought on foreclosure. And I've got that similar form when I do my rental properties. So like if I bought a property from taxes and they rent it out, there's the last addendum that they're like, hey, this property's been foreclosed on via taxes. In the unlikely event that there's a redemption, you'll be given 30 days notice. You could probably get with an attorney and craft something like that, but you just need to be very clear with the people that are buying it that, hey, this is what's going on. But then it starts to really complicate things that I've found. And maybe, I don't know, just be careful. It's a situation that it's better to be in the right than rich, because if it goes sideways, and if it does go sideways, it's going sideways really bad, you're going to be the one that looks like trash and will probably get sued from both sides if they know what they're doing. So just be smart about it. So I don't think it's impossible, but just be really smart. Let's see, we've got some comments. Stop talking. Y'all are very generous with the lunches. In an opportunity zone. Yeah, I think that's an angle. I think, again, so let's talk about that. So if a property is in the opportunity zone, as some of you all know that have watched my videos, means that anything that you do is reimbursable. So you cut the grass, it's there. You do this, it's that, and you can really kind of overbuild it. I would say it depends on the value of the property, because a lot of these areas and opportunity zones, the value of the property is not there. Because I think you're going to make quite a bit of money on a deal like that, I would say go ahead and get your subject to appraisal. Hey, this is the value of the property right now. This, and then in 6 months or a year, when they're done, get another one, and just use it as insurance excuse or whatever. Insurance man's coming, or we're getting an appraisal on the property. Whatever you want to tell them. Generally, they're pretty easy to work with, because you gave them an opportunity that nobody else would. So they're generally pretty easy to work with. So then I would get one when they're done with the property, and I think that would cover you well enough in the event that somebody tried to come back and redeem. And that way, if they do to redeem, you're going to make it extremely expensive for them. I would probably let the people know, like, hey, there's a chance this is what's going on. And I think just good communication helps bad problems be less of an issue. It's like, hey, here's what we're up against. You're going to be reimbursed for X, Y, and Z. And just have a conversation with them. And I would probably, if it's a certificate, I would probably discount it. Like, if, just for number's sake, if the property's worth 50 and it needs 20, so normal situations you could sell it for 30, I would maybe sell it for 20 and be like, hey, here's why. There's a right of redemption. But with like deeds, and if I'm sure about it, I mean, we're selling it straight. Like, hey, there's issues with the title, but we're selling it as a tax. We still sell it as a tax deed, but it's not as detailed out. Like, we're not having a huge conversation. Like, hey, yeah, we're buying it. You're buying the title as is. The likelihood of redemption is low, if not zero. And then, so those are already discounted as well. So if I'm not fixing the title, but a lot of times and we've talked about, I think I've talked about this before. It all kind of runs together. But if there's just one person in the chain of title that's messing up, so A, B, C, and D have all transferred the property to the next person correctly, and it's a D that didn't pay their taxes, you can get a ejectment notice. And if they don't, if there's nothing that goes on, and they're pretty cool, or they default, or they don't if they don't cause a stink, you can generally push in a motion, be like, hey, look, judge, this is the only person that's in the way of having clear title. They no longer have a right to redeem. There's nothing else impeding it. Can we get a quiet title motion? And 9 times out of 10, well, 10 times out of 10 for me so far, knock on some wood somewhere. The judge has been like, well, yeah, here you go. So in those situations, I will be fixing the title on the back end and then be dropping in a regular mortgage. And then whenever they come back around and finally pay it off, they just get a warranty deed. Let's see. I agree with you. Lease option and where credit for. You could do that. It's a lease option. You're still renting, so, and there's been some cases that have talked about or that have happened in a lease agreement or a lease option where the option money is considered down payment, and the judge is like, no, that they have rights to the property. With the eviction block going on that's right now, you can almost get a foreclosure done faster than you can an eviction, which is interesting. But needless to say, you could probably count on about $1,500 to $2,000, depending on what it is, for an eviction. So, sorry guys, we didn't get a look at the other property. Just not looking to, not looking. You want to be smart when you're out looking at these things. Bringing a buddy, and yeah, it's not a good conversation to have. Yeah, so I don't do a lot of lease options, right? So I just have read too much and kind of have a bit of a, I guess, stuck in my ways, or try to stay in my lane. I've had conversations with people, but I think I would rather be in the position that it's very clear that I'm trying to do the right thing versus it be kind of wishy-washy there. Because really, either way, the goal is to have them buy the property and me not have to do anything with it. So if I'm alleviating myself from all the issues, we'll try to make it advantageous for them to actually end up buying it. Like they get the property. A, because I don't really want it in the sense of having to deal with it, but also, can you explain town finance? Yeah, so we talked about that a little bit earlier, but basically, you're really risky. You could just lease it. So the problem with your leasing it, so when I do these, I don't fix them. Like, I don't do anything to the property. So with these leases, you'd end up having to renovate the property and then do it. Which, I mean, honestly, for some folks that may be the route to go. But I think that you could do 10 owner financing deals with one leased one. Because you can't, your money's stuck. So until you clear the title, your money that you've put into the property is trapped until a bank either refinances or you can sell it. So with this one, you're buying one for $6,000. You're turned right around and owner financing it with 5 down, for let's say 40. So your spread is a lot bigger and your risk is a lot lower because you've got like $1,000 in it for the next 3 months. Yeah, so let's go back to the owner financing. What if it's occupied? So this situation I'm talking about is with vacant property. You can certainly do this with occupied property, but you're gonna have to file an ejectment first to remove them from the property for you to be able to put somebody else in there, which is regardless of owner financing, leasing, whatever. You still got to put, you still got to get the other people out. And sometimes you can work out a lease agreement with the current owners and owner finance it back to them. We've got a couple people that are doing that currently. Again, I would just be, the spread's going to be a lot less. Also because you've got a little bit, you're not really doing anything. I feel like there's a level of like you're paid for what you do and sometimes what you know. But so like if you just bought the taxes and you're owner financing it back to the owners, I don't know how much more over maybe like $2,000 or $3,000 you can get over what you have in it. Now you can charge maybe 15-20%. That's the thing I was going to talk about. But I don't know if there's a whole lot of spread to be made, but it's a lot easier. I mean, you can turn your money, but the problem is they're going to be paying like $200 a month, $300 a month, and that's going to take a while for your money to come back in, even if you're making a good return. The other side of it is, so like if you paid $6,000 for this property and you're selling it back to the owners at $200 a month, so all right, so who's doing insurance? Who's doing next year's taxes? You start adding up all this stuff, and it just starts to be like, you can be doing this forever. And I've had a couple of situations where I tried to work it out with the owners beforehand, and it's just like, so the house needs like 10 grand worth of work minimum, and you don't have any money put down, and you can pay like $300 a month, and you owe like $9,000. Well, so when I say $200, the people that have gotten themselves in situations not being able to pay their taxes, I've yet to have an offer that's very high. Most of the time it's like, man, I can do like $300, $400. And really, so like when we talked about insurance and other taxes, $200 is going to be all you get, because the other $300 are going towards next year's taxes and the insurance. So the money that's actually going in your pocket, I mean, it might be a $500 payment, but $200 is only really come back to you. So it's going to take forever to pay it off. And I've had a couple situations where it's just not, like the house needs work and they can't pay very much, so it's just like, look, let me give you $1,000 and help you with a moving truck, and you find somewhere to go, because this is not gonna work. And that there's gonna be a level of, like, when you start doing a bunch of these, that you're gonna run into grandma or maybe an elderly couple that just didn't have their act together, and you're gonna have to make kind of a decision on where you're going. So if you're very tender-hearted and you're really sweet to people, you just need to be careful, because you'll get told a lot of different things. Oh, I've got this, I've got that. And the situation that I was talking about before, where the house needed work, she said that she was just on Social Security, but I ended up finding out later that she had a little side hustle keeping people. So it just ended up taking me like a year of a runaround. So I say all that is that you have to have a little bit of asshole in you just to deal with people that, look, it's like, hey, I'll treat you fair, I'll try to take care of you, but here's where we're going, and here's what we're doing. But to answer your original question about owner financing a tax certificate, I would just be very mindful of what's on there, because if it does redeem, you've got a 3-person cluster mess that's just going to be a nightmare to pull apart. And then the final thing that I wanted to talk about that has been a pain in my ass is the amortization schedule. So you tell them it's $438.15 a month, and they pay that, and they pay that, and then all of a sudden they pay $500. Well, shit. Now you got to redo your whole amortization schedule. So my recommendation would be is to do a finance fee. So figure out the monthly, figure out the interest rate that you're going to charge, figure out the term that you're going to do, and then just put together a finance charge. So, 10%, 15%, 12%, and try to be semi-reasonable. Again, if you have to foreclose, you don't want to be in front of the judge being like, yeah, I took advantage of these people, they really couldn't afford it, and here we go. And that's the other side of it, that there's only so many owner financing deals that you can do a year. I think it's 3, so that's why sometimes we use land contracts. I've not seen it in Alabama, but I've seen some other folks that have talked about that with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, there's some guidelines on the feasibility if somebody can afford the payment. So if you sign somebody up that can't afford the payment, you might be required to pay it all back. I haven't seen that in Alabama. I know other states do it, but just be mindful. Don't try to take advantage of people. Provide a good service, which is owner financing for people that maybe can't get it elsewhere, and just treat them right. And I think that'll come back on you 100 times over. But going back to the idea that you just charge a finance fee, so you just tack that onto the total. So that also helps if they overpay or if they pay early. So I'll give you an example. I've got this guy that pays like a week early every time, always over. Flat. His bills, I think like $380 or something, but he pays $500 every time. and he's just got a flat fee on there. So it's just a total payoff of whatever the amount is. So it just makes life so much easier, because otherwise the amortization schedule has to be redone every time, and you have to apply the money, and it's just, I hate it, my accountant hates it, my bookkeeper hates it, everybody's just like, all right, let's find something else that makes sense. So in the contract or in the agreement, it's, you know, like, hey, the purchase price is $20,000, down payment's $5,000, finance charge is $6,000, or whatever you want it to be. All right, let's see. How get help for 2,800? Okay. 2020. The purchase, the amount is pretty low, so it may be one that $2,800 is not a lot to come up with. It sounds like you've already talked to him, so you might be able to work out some kind of arrangement. You might add, I don't know, $1,500 to that, and then work out some kind of 1-year term if you're trying to work out a deal with him. If not, then you could file an ejectment and try to push it along. I may let it cook for another year, and that way you've got a little bit more meat in it. You could throw insurance on it. There's a couple of little fees you can add onto it to make it a little bit more difficult for him to redeem, but I guess it depends on what you want to do with it and how agreeable you want to be with him. Again, $2,800 is not a lot to come up with. So I think I have rambled and talked enough. I think I've answered all your guys' questions. I've got one for you for $3K. It's a great condition, 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Sure. I mean, I'll look at anything. What about selling a tax-certificate home, owner financing, and opportunity? Yeah, we already talked about that. Okay, I think we've talked about all of our questions. Again, I'm going to start trying to do these more often. That way you guys can maybe see my thought process, whether that be good or bad. And then I can just kind of point out stuff and talk about different houses and maybe some things that I would do with it. Yeah, so this is, I used to do it, so like back when Alaria was doing its thing, I used to do one, like, I don't know, when we were flipping a bunch of houses. There was a time we had like 20 houses going at once, and that nearly killed me. And I used to do one like every day. It's like, hey, we're just talking about this, talking about that. So I'm gonna try to be a little bit more consistent with putting one out maybe once a week. Try to go look at 2-3 properties and kind of talk about them and answer questions. The other two that I was really just trying to find a low priced one and a high priced one, which you guys bought them. Like, I think we had orders in before I was done with the second video. So hopefully this has been helpful. You guys have yourself a fantastic weekend, and we look forward to talk more.